I'll request you to do
Okay,
that
ma'am,
for
I'll
me.
share. Not an issue. Not an issue.
Let me just check it.
Okay, ma'am.
So is my screen visible? Sarika ma'am, can you just reply if you're able to see the PPT?
Yes, ma'am, your screen is visible, Priyanka, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. Then in that case, I think I'll manage the screen sharing. But just in case I'm not able to do it at some point of time, I'll request you to just help me with that. Okay, so a very good afternoon to all. And as I can see, we are just 21 right now. Maybe a few more would join us in a while. So this is the last session of the day. I'm Priyanka Vohra. I'll be taking up a session on prose. So we'll be discussing certain strategies and some ideas that you can take to your classroom regarding teaching of prose. So the first slide that you have is let's do a little bit of brainstorming about what prose is. So I would request all of you to use the chat box and type your replies. What do you understand by this term prose? So there's a question in on your screen. Our understanding of the term prose. What are the keywords you can think of, or some examples that that just strike your mind? So please type in the chat box. So it's not poetry. Absolutely right, Aditi ma'am. There are paragraphs, and another participant says bunch of sentences. Ankit sir and Aditi ma'am on the same. They have the same thought. It's not poetry. Yes, writing or speaking that is not ornamented. Yes, absolutely right. We have got certain features of what prose is and also what it is not. So let's have a look. What you can see right now on your screen is a Wordle. Now, when I Google searched for what prose is, this was the most popular Wordle that was available, which means that many participants, many people think that drama as such is one form of prose, which is also right. And can we have some more examples? Can the other participants also reply using the chat box, please? Some examples of prose. So we get some answers. Context-based content without rhythm, yes. Again, a differentiation from poetry. No rhyme scheme, absolutely right. So coming back to the slide, there are some striking words that I want you to pay attention to. If you can see, there's a word voice. So any prose piece, there could be one voice, there could be many speakers, many participants in that. Then another word that I want you to focus on is movement, development. There could be a series of events which progress. So there are prose pieces like that. There's creativity on your screen. There's acting, yes. there's expression, and in some form or the other, there's imagination. So all these are some key features of any prose piece. So moving on, another definition which says it comprises of full grammatical sentences, consists of paragraphs, as some of you also mentioned. There's no aesthetic appeal, and it's a very straightforward language. So, in a way, the way we think or the way we speak, that's also prose.
Hello, Priyanka. I have joined the meeting. Let me know in case you want me to share the slides or any help. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. As of now, Amita, I'm able to manage. In case I get stuck somewhere, you or Sarika ma'am would be needed that time. Okay, so would any of you like to unmute yourself and add something to this definition? I'm getting another example. There are short stories. Yes. We'll in the
Sorry, ma'am, your screen is not visible. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you for sharing that. I'll just check. Amita, I think you've started screen sharing. If you just stop that, I'll be able to share the screen. Amita? Amita? So yes, I asked you for some examples and I got one response from Aditi ma'am, and she said short stories are one form, one example. What we are talking of now is that there can be broadly two categories, fiction and non-fiction, when we are talking of prose. So I want somebody to just unmute himself or herself and read what's written just below the headline, fiction versus non-fiction. Could any one of you unmute yourself and read it aloud, please?
Priyanka, your screen is not visible, I believe. So I think that's what the participants
Still, it is not. Yeah.
Yes, it's not visible. That is the reason I started screen sharing.
Okay, okay. Right. This is where I stopped. Now is my screen visible?
Yeah, your
Yes,
screen
ma'am,
is
yes.
visible. And
Yeah.
please make it in the presentation mode. Yes, now it's better.
Okay, so coming to the categories where we classify them as fiction and non-fiction, we have some definitions. I want somebody to please quickly read them aloud. When it comes to books, can somebody unmute himself or herself and read it, please?
Okay.
If you can see the
Fiction
cursor.
versus non-fiction. When it comes to books, there is an easy way to quickly classify all of them into two categories and say that some are fiction while the rest are non-fiction. The same classification can also apply to television, plays, or films, but the terms fiction and non-fiction are still heard most often in literature.
All
May I
right, thank you
finish?
so much.
Okay.
Sir,
Yeah.
thanks, Ashish sir. And somebody else to please read aloud the definitions. There's a blue column and a red column. Please volunteer to read aloud the definition given in the blue column.
I'll read it.
Sure, ma'am.
It says fiction, when you are talking about fiction, you're talking about the plot, the characters, and the setting that are created by the. It's not something.
Fine. So we get a broad outline that in fiction we have the three elements, the characters, the plot, and the setting. Avni ma'am, can you go to the red column and read aloud non-fiction as well?
Yeah. Non-fiction refers to stories that are based on events that actually happened in reality. The characters are real people.
Absolutely. So let's keep this in mind, and let's keep these two categories in mind and do a short exercise that's coming up on the next slide. Now you have some common examples of prose in front of you. Just give them a quick reading and we'll discuss under which category, fiction or non-fiction, can we place them. So I'll pause here for 30 seconds and I want you to just give it a silent reading. Right. So we'll begin with the novel. Under which can please use your chat box and type your responses whether you consider novel as fiction or non-fiction. I'll repeat the question. Okay, some of you started responding. Fiction, both. Okay, let's check it out. We'll check it out. So some responses that novel is a fiction, and some say that it could be both fiction and non-fiction. The second category, the second example, we have biography. So is that fiction or non-fiction? Please type in the chat box. Biography is non-fiction. Non-fiction, correct? Okay. So most of us agree that biography is non-fiction. After that, we have play or drama. So which category would that fall into? Both, yes. Avni ma'am says both. Binny sir says both. Anu ma'am says it's fiction. Okay. Memoirs. Can that be fiction? What would that be, fiction or non-fiction? So memoirs are actually, focused more on the feelings and memories. So that's a first-person account, similar to what we have in an autobiography. So non-fiction, yes, fine. Because we are a little short of time, I'll just skip to the next slide and check how far our responses are correct. So under fiction, we have short stories, we have legends, there are fairy tales, folktale memoirs. Now, this is different. Folktale memoirs come under fiction, but they are similar. You can see that they're also placed in the non-fiction category. So if a person is writing about some account of his life, that becomes non-fiction. And novel again is under fiction. Fables, myths, short stories, these are examples of fiction. Biographies, reports, personal narratives, these are all examples of non-fiction. So moving ahead. So how do we deal with the prose lessons that we have in our syllabi? When you're teaching a particular prose lesson, can one or two of you unmute yourself and share how do you go about taking up these lessons? I'll appreciate if you respond, please. Any strategies that you use when you deal with prose lessons? Okay, since people are reluctant to reply, we'll just have a look. We normally begin with pre-reading, while reading, and post-reading activities. That's something we do very commonly, and that's a very important aspect of beginning with a prose lesson, where you connect the child with the prior knowledge. What's about to come in the lesson, you initiate the learners to in that particular context. Then how do we support these very, so to say, difficult prose lessons? They're not actually difficult, but given the proficiency of our students in English language, we have to support these prose lessons. We can do it using online videos. Now, material is available. I've quoted some examples also. In class 9, there's a lesson, My Childhood. It's on it's about the life of Dr. Abdul Kalam. There's animated version of it. There's a particular website, bookbox.com, where you can use this animated story and supplement it with your lesson. Another example, class 10th, you have a lesson from the Diary of Anne Frank. And again, you have lots and lots of videos available on the internet. So any prose lesson, if supplemented with such videos, you maximize the reach of it. You maximize its reach to the students. So again, in a prose lesson, we could be dealing with vocabulary. We can do a mind mapping exercise. You've already had a session on vocabulary development. So a lot of ideas can be taken from there. We generally notice that they are all the prose lessons are based on a particular theme. So in a way, every student gets to pick up 4 to 5 new words from each lesson. So that's how a prose lesson helps to develop vocabulary. Teaching sentence structures, you could encourage some activities where students write, I feel that, I saw that, I noticed that. So this is what I mean by teaching sentence structures. We can easily include LSRW activities. We generally focus on reading because for any prose lesson, our prime most target is reading comprehension. So LS also need to be given some weightage, and it's easy to design activities based on a particular prose lesson. Then grammar activities, and if you've already had a session on grammar, you must have by now developed an understanding that we cannot teach grammar in isolation. It has to be contextualized, and it's easier to do it that way. If we start with grammar rules and do it in isolation, it's very difficult to understand it and use it. So, but if it's done using a prose lesson, it becomes easy. Here I'll give an example. For example, you may take a particular paragraph of a chapter, and you could just delete the prepositions or leave blanks in places where there are certain prepositions, and ask the students to fill in appropriate prepositions. Or just after you've read a particular paragraph, you could practice tenses using that paragraph. So that's what I mean by doing grammar activities in a prose lesson. Role play, something that's very popular in our classes. We tend to do that.
Body of the fish. So that is